Hello, everyone. Our webinar series called 5 O'Clock Tea Talk reached its 22nd episode, and our guest is Angus Ridgway today. I would like to introduce him first. Angus Ridgway co founded Potential Life in 2011 along with Tal Ben Shahar. Angus's interest in leadership and culture goes back to the early days of his 20-year career at McKinsey and Company, where he led firm's partner leadership development function globally. During these days, he asked the question, why is it that some people are on fire and flourish, while others with an identical profile flounder? Angus spent his time spreading his vision for a better world driven by positive leadership. He is a best-selling author and renowned TEDx public speaker. For over 10 years, he led leadership development for the firm's 1,500 partners globally, focusing on the creation of 10x leaders within the firm and with clients. He obtained his Bachelor Science in Pure Mathematics from Nottingham University and his MBA from INSEAD in Fontainebleau. And I'm quoting his answer to what gets you out of bed every morning. The science of successful behaviors, those that make people happier and more productive, has been locked away in a vault that only a select, powerful few had the key to. Until now, Potential Life has broken the seal, and we are democratizing leadership for all and at all levels. That gives me a skip in my step on my way to work every morning. We are so lucky to have you here with us today. Thank you for accepting our invitation to this event. How are you, Angus?
I'm fine and delighted to be here with you today as well. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Before we start, I would like to encourage our audience to hit the subscribe button on our channel for more insightful sessions. Don't miss out on this captivating 5 o'clock tea talk. Hit the ring button and remember to subscribe. For more great content, visit www.thecoachmagazine.com and enjoy our quarterly magazines. So, I would like to start with my first question. Your leadership journey at McKinsey and Company, which included developing leadership programs for 1,500 partners globally. Can you share a pivotal moment that shaped your vision for positive leadership and the foundation of Potential Life?
Yeah, with pleasure. In fact, it's all started very early for me at the very start of my career. So I joined McKinsey. I was young. I think I was 26 years old. And I was looking around at my fellow colleagues who were all also 26 years old, more or less. And I was just struck by something that I thought was incredible, which is that some of my colleagues just seemed to be on fire. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so I get to use words like on fire, but they seemed to look like they knew where they were going. They had lots of energy and they seemed to get on well with everybody. Now, that wouldn't be particularly interesting if it wasn't that there were also other colleagues who'd right from day one just seemed to be struggling to keep their head above water. And the interesting thing about McKinsey is that it's an incredibly normative environment. In other words, everybody has the same grades from the same schools and at the same age does the same job with the same pace of progression. So a huge amount of sameness is a very interesting laboratory. And yet, despite this sameness, immediately saw this difference. So this was a very founding moment for my own interest in this subject, partly out of self-interest. I wanted to know what these folks are doing, because maybe if I do what they do, then maybe I'll have a chance of not only surviving, but maybe being successful. And that was the beginning of what became a curiosity, became a hobby, became a passion. And looking back now, 30 years later, has really become my life's work.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And in Potential Life, you aim to democratize leadership and unlock the science of successful behaviors from a CEO's perspective. What are the core elements that organizations should focus on to foster a culture of flourishing leaders?
Well, I think the most important from a CEO perspective is to understand that organizations are looser than they used to be. This is one of the founding ideas that led us to create Potential Life. It's really the CEO perspective. If you go back 20, 30, 40 years, organizations were quite tight things. You had some time available to you to define in detail how the organization is supposed to work. So people had clear role definitions and people could just get on with their job. But things have changed. Things move quickly. And so nobody has time like they used to have to codify exactly in the detail how things are supposed to work. So organizations have space. They're looser things. And the question is, what's the implication of this space? And really, what this space comes down to is choice for people to bring many different, potentially many different versions of themselves to work every day. It's a kind of a moment of discretion. Do I bring just the minimum of myself to work? I do my job, it's perfectly fine, and it fits the technical definition. But you know what? When I'm done, I'm done. I'm out of here. Or am I bringing lots of my discretionary energy and passion and joy and enthusiasm into my work? That also fits the job definition. So, what do people choose? And so we realized that organizations that would be full of people who choose to put more of this discretionary energy and joy into their work, these will become the winning organizations, the leaders. And so we felt that, and if you like, we can call this culture. And so we felt that organizations that have this type of culture would become the winners. And that was really from a CEO perspective, the founding idea behind what Potential Life is.
And it's the culture becomes from the top to the bottom levels, right? The CEOs, the leaders should implement this into their life first, then the other manager levels and the employees is good to go with this idea. So it's coming from the top, right?
Yeah, it has to start at the top. And I'm very blunt when I talk to CEOs that you cannot pretend. You cannot sort of just have lip service and say, we want this great culture, but actually not incarnate these values yourself. Everybody who sees this immediately. And so there's nowhere to hide. So if you're
Yes.
serious about this as a CEO, you have to sort of live this yourself. And we can talk about, what are some examples? What does this mean in practice? But almost at the level of the philosophy, you have to decide for yourself that you are going to be one of these flourishing people. And as Gandhi said, it's some time to be the change that you want to see.
Yes.
And that's what leaders actually have to do.
Yes. Really great quote. Thank you. And how do you see the roles of coaching and mentoring evolving in modern organizations, particularly in cultivating 10x leaders? And what unique insights does Potential Life bring to this evolution?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most important ideas is the idea of reach or scale. You can either talk about scaling into an organization or reaching deep inside the organization. But when we talked before about this, organizations being looser and there being space for expression in the organization, this concerns everybody. It starts at the top. The role of the leadership team is very important because they have to incarnate the vision and codify and express the vision, and they have to provide clarity and direction. But then you have the middle management. This might be the next 80 or 100 people in an organization. They need to be the relays of this vision deep into the organization. So they have to understand the vision, they have to be living it and communicating it positively. And then you have teams and frontline workers. They also have a choice. And so, whereas previously, when the question of coaching or mentorship was on the table, you might say, well, this person, this person, this person, this person. Now it might be 1,000 people that need to grow as human beings. And of course, coaching as a functionality has a role to play. The question is, how do you bring the functionality of coaching at scale into organization? Do you bring 1,000 coaches to coach 1,000 people, or are there other solutions? And of course, Potential Life is our approach to scaling this idea of personal growth deep inside an organization.
Yeah, so as I experienced potential life in Women Insight, I can say with just one platform, you can impact thousands of people's lives, and in just less than 1 year with all three levels, 10 module each, and it is very impactful, I can say.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when you think of, I'd maybe just talk a little bit about the methodology behind Potential Life for a second. I think what's very important is to understand that a whole industry of leadership development for many years was focused on the idea of learning, of education. We'll provide you information, content. You will study that information, and somehow, because you've studied content on leadership, you will become a leader. Actually, as an idea, this is completely flawed. The educational approach to personal development just doesn't work. When I did my MBA at INSEAD many years ago, when I went into the MBA, I thought naively that I would become a leader. And so I spent a year studying leadership. What happened? I didn't become a leader. I knew more about leadership, but when I graduated for INSEAD, I was just the same person I was from a leadership perspective as I was when I went in. All of my growth as a leader happened later on in life when I was exposed to situations of leadership. So we need to sort of acknowledge that the educational based approach to growth doesn't apply when it comes to personal development. And we need to look into the world of neuroscience to understand how we as human beings change, how we grow. And then you see some very simple, but some very powerful ideas. The first one being that we are creatures of habit. And so if we want to grow as human beings, we need to look at how we can evolve our habits. And then when we say, okay, so how do we evolve our habits? Then the question is, well, if you start by making small changes, but then repeat them, then at some point, those small changes repeated will become your default way of doing things. And this isn't just Angus saying something that sounds nice. It's the neuroscience of the brain. When you look inside the structure of our brain with those neural pathways, those channels get changed in their direction when we initiate a new behavior. And then when we repeat that behavior, those channels become more entrenched. And at some point, this becomes the default way of doing things. So we can change, we can grow as human beings, but it happens through a process of enactment, of trying things out for real. And then after a while, it just kind of becomes the way I do things now. So that's a very important sort of thing to have in mind when we think about how do we help people grow.
And you're not doing it alone. You're doing your own work in the models and the platform, everything you learn. But then you come together with the body group, you put into action, or you're talking about what you have done and what other you listen to what others done, and it gives you more ideas. It inspires you even more to do a lot more in your own life. So it is very effective, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. We have, we are social animals. And when we hang out together in groups and bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other and hold each other accountable and have fun together, then magic happens and our growth journey just multiplies up. So we really, whatever the theme of our growth is, um, we need to look at doing things in groups. And when we do that, we have fun and change happens. And in Potential Life, we have these things called buddy groups, which is exactly that, groups where we chat together, we have fun together. And then lo and behold, our growth journey has just accelerated.
Yeah, that accountability partner concept instilled in me with this program, and I am so grateful for that, because by myself I cannot achieve certain things like losing weight, continuing my daily sports. But if I have an accountability partner, then it goes great, because I know there's somebody with me doing the same things, or I have to give my, daily report, and he or she is encouraging me to do more. If I let myself down, she or he, you know, takes me back on my routine, so it's very great.
Yeah, great.
And my next question, with your background in pure mathematics and MBA from INSEAD, how do you integrate analytical thinking with the human-centric approach required in leadership development and driving organizational change?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, you know, when we think about how we help people grow, we need to provide them small stimuli to nudge people on their growth journey. And one of the really interesting questions is, how do we try to make this small stimulus feel personal? And this is where analytics can help. Because if you use analytical data in the right way, you can make an experience feel very, very personal. Let's take a generic example. I want to help people play more to their strengths. That's a good thing to do. The generic approach that doesn't use analytics would say, why don't you try playing to your strengths? It's a good thing to do. Have you seen the research? Yeah, that looks good. Maybe I'll try to play to my strengths. That's not bad. But the analytical approach says, in addition, here are your number one, number two, number three top character strengths. Why don't you pick one of those three and look for an opportunity next week, maybe in a work meeting, to use one of those strengths just a little bit more? Say, okay, now I see what I can do. Okay, I'm going to try and use my strength of humor, or my strength of perspective, or my strength of curiosity. And I've got my meeting at 10 a.m. on Tuesday with my boss, and I can see how I can maybe use my humor, because actually, you know what? My boss sometimes can be a little bit negative, and I've noticed that when I use my humor, sometimes it helps dissipate the negative energy in the media, and that's actually quite a valuable thing for the group. All of a sudden, you're alive and you're implementing this strengths approach. And actually, behind all of this was the analytical approach that was able to bring the right piece of data to you at the very right moment so that you could then act upon it. And I think that makes a big difference in terms of personalization of the experience.
It's like giving the manuals to people, like showing the big picture and understanding it, seeing it in front of you, and then, oh, okay, now I can do this. Otherwise, it's just hypothetical, and most of us don't know how to do with that.
Yeah, it can be very abstract. It can feel
Yeah.
very abstract. And by the way, on the subject of strengths, for many people, this does feel very abstract. Most people know what their weaknesses are because we've been given feedback at school and then at work. Most people can tell you what their development needs are. But most of us have no idea what our character strengths are because we always thought the thing to focus on was on our weaknesses. And so it's almost as though our strengths antennae never really developed properly. So we need to help people. We need to help them start by giving them some data that allows them to go from the abstract to the specific.
And in potential life, we start with strengths. The sharp model starts with strengths. Would you like to talk about a little bit about the sharp model?
Yeah. So we have a model called the SHARP model. And the most important thing about the SHARP model is that we wanted Tal, who's my co-founder, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar from Harvard, we wanted to create a framework that simply represented the scientific research. So we wanted to be humble integrators of the science. We don't need to invent our own ideas. Let's just let the science do the heavy lifting. But we also wanted this framework to be easy, accessible, easy to understand. So we spent about a year integrating the 25 years of research that had gone into the field of positive psychology to try and get the best expression there is of what it means to be on fire, to be consistently on fire, of course, without burning out, to be a flourishing person. And the SHARP framework reflects this. And by the way, we've published a book called the Joy of Leadership. You might be able to see that on the screen.
Yes.
And it's definitely worth a read. Now, if I just describe very briefly the SHARP framework. So we've talked a little bit about the first letter, this idea of playing to your strengths. And I won't repeat what I just said, but what I will say is if any of us, the two of us, any person listening to today's session is going to do anything of noteworthy in their lives, anything noteworthy, it will only happen because we're playing to those character strengths. And so we need to get started. And yet most of us aren't even on base one. And it's never too late to start. Even if you start late in life, you still have the rest of your life to bring those strengths into your life. And if you're a younger person, you've got all of your life in front of you. So that's such an important part of flourishing. It gives self-confidence. It gives more curiosity. It gives you your sense that you are just being yourself, just being the best version of yourself. These are my strengths. I'm not trying to be something else. I'm just trying to be the best version of me. And so that's very important. So that's strengths. The second letter is H for health, but this has to do with energy and stress and how we cope with a world that just seems very, very stressful. And you know, many of us think that stress is bad, therefore we should be eliminating stress. But actually, that's not quite the right way of looking at stress. Firstly, because stress ain't going nowhere. And secondly, we need some stress. You know, some stress is good for us. It kind of gets me out of bed in the morning. And so we need to reframe our relationship to stress. And the way forward here is to think in a much more intentional way about recovery from stress. And so what we talk about in Potential Life is micro recovery, mezzo and macro recovery. Micro recovery is all the tiny little things that during the course of the day that will affect whether you're feeling relatively fresh when you get home in the evening or completely drained. You know, for example, it only takes a slightly unpleasant 15-second interaction with your boss that's not doesn't go very nicely. Maybe your boss says something a bit nasty. Only 15 seconds, but all of the energy just drains from your body. And then you get home in the evening and you can't even remember the incident, but you still feel drained. That has a huge impact on your health and your energy. So these are the small things, and then we have things to do in the medium term and long term. But the most important is to be intentional about how you think about your recovery, and this idea that the return on our freshness, if you like, ROF, is non-linear. In other words, just a small investment in your freshness gives a massive return. And so we really need to sort of take ownership of that. So that's the second area. The third area is a letter A for absorption. This has to do with the fact that we are often very distracted. In other words, not absorbed in what we're doing. You know, the number of solicitations on our attention is infinite. Just think right now, people may be watching us talking, but as they're trying to listen to us, maybe their telephone has just given them a notification, or maybe an email, or maybe somebody just walks in front of you and it distracts you. The possibilities for distraction are huge. And sometimes we tend to think that multitasking is therefore good. I can achieve more by multitasking. But actually, multitasking reduces productivity because we end up spending lots of time hopping in between tasks. And the real productivity comes from deep work on a single task, being absorbed in what you're doing. So we need to learn to take back control of our attention, engage mindfully in what we're doing. And this is the idea of being absorbed. And the great thing about absorption is just very easy and immediate to do. We don't need to study. We don't need to read any books. We can just get on with it. The fourth area has to do with the letter R for relationships. And here, what's most important in the world of work is how we all interact with each other in these loose organizations. And what we talk about is simultaneity when it comes to positivity and authenticity. Now, we all understand what positivity means, being kind, caring, empathetic. We also all understand what authenticity means, being direct, saying what needs to be said. But a lot of us think that we can't do both at the same time. In other words, if I'm going to be really authentic and direct, maybe it's going to come out a bit negative, i.e., not positive. Or if I'm going to be kind and caring and positive, maybe I won't say everything. Maybe I'll hold something back, i.e., not authentic. The key here is to know that not only is it very, very necessary and valuable that we practice this positive authenticity, but it's very doable as well. So it's a fundamental key of leadership. And then the fifth area, the letter P, is P for purpose. Has to do with the why am I doing what I'm doing question. Not the big sort of meaning of life question. Of course, that's interesting too. But rather in every single moment of my day, every day, how can I say when I get home from that day, yeah, that was a good day. That was meaningful. Uh, and can we go about the moments of our life purposefully? Can we put meaning into what we're doing as opposed to maybe waiting for meaning to be given to us, maybe when we land the promotion or get the big contract? And the answer is yes, we have agency here, we have control to go about our moments purposefully, to be benefit finders. So what I've been through here is a very quick sort of explanation of the Sharp framework and therefore 25 years of research into the field of flourishing. And if each of us just does a little bit more on these five sharp levers, then we'll get just a little bit closer to being one of those flourishing, on fire people.
Yes, hopefully. Everyone on earth needs this. So not just, participating in this kind of platforms, but even to read your book, understand the implementation of this program is huge impact in everyone's life, I think.
Yeah.
So, my next question has two parts. First, could you please share a success story where potential life's principles significantly transformed an organization's leadership culture, highlighting the impact on both individual leaders and the broader organization? And secondly, I would like to discuss Women Insight, which runs an initiative to support women worldwide using the Potential Life platform, enhancing their strengths, confidence, health, focus, and network. What would you like to say about this ongoing initiative?
Great. So happy we have many clients. And so, what Potential Life does from a CEO perspective is help organizations build a great culture at scale. That's our CEO value proposition. And we've worked with many companies that are undergoing massive structural change. So, for example, we're working with a retail bank in the US called US Bank. So this is a company that has local bank branches throughout the US. If you go into small town America, in pretty much any town, you'll have the stoplight, you'll have the pharmacy, and then you'll have a branch of US Bank. So it's very much part of the tissue of small town America. Now, the thing is that banking, like many other industries, is undergoing massive change because of technology. And whereas in the past, the bank did an awful lot of processing, for example, processing checks, this is all automated now. And so the question is, what should the branch of the future actually be? And so the bank has a very, very, I believe, forward-looking vision that the branches should be relationship hubs. And the acid test is that when maybe somebody from the local town is stopping at the stoplight, they choose to drop by and say hi and have a cup of coffee in the local bank branch, maybe meet their manager and talk about business and then move on. It's fundamentally a human interaction. And the bank has a beautifully articulated mantra or strategy or vision for leadership, which is called simple, kind, joy. It's very daring. Simple, just three words: simple, kind, joy. And they're basically saying if the bank embraces simplicity, kindness, and joy in all of our interactions with each other and with our customers, then we will humanize our institution and become a set of relationship people, whereas historically we were a set of processing people. And so we've been working extensively with the bank at scale or deep into the organization at the level of all of the branches. And this has been a story of transformation. And the great thing about this is not only does this give a bright new future to the bank strategically, but what we're deploying inside the bank is the science of flourishing. So we're helping more people flourish to be happier, to be the best version of themselves. So in a way, we're doing some good along the way of helping this bank build a winning strategy.
That's very nice. And the woman inside part.
Yeah, so women inside, yeah. So I'm hearing an alarm somewhere. I'm not quite sure if it's my alarm, but no worries. So Women Inside is, I think, an incredible initiative that we launched at Potential Life, and really the founding thought at Potential Life was at the very beginning. Our mission isn't just to help organizations to become better organizations. Our mission is really around scaling the science of flourishing to benefit humanity, to do some good in the world. And so we selected a series of causes that are close to our hearts. And one of them has to do with women empowerment. And so our colleague Solange, together with Seda and some other people, have been leading this initiative to help more women in the world flourish and feel self-empowered. And the way this works is that Women Inside brings together groups of diverse women from all over the world in a large group that we call a cohort. Sometimes there are 30 people, sometimes there are 100 people in this cohort. And these women together go through a process of personal development and empowerment. And I think one of the magical things that we discovered at Women Insight is the more that you inject diversity inside these groups of women, for example, by having maybe a high-powered marketing executive from New York together with somebody who works inside an organization in Thailand, and maybe also in somebody from sub-Saharan Africa, very diverse profiles, together inside the same group, then you discover that everybody inside such a group has something to give to everybody else, and everybody has something to take from everybody else. So these have been fascinating learning forums where it's really been the global diversity of these women groups that has made the magic.
And I would like to announce our Turkish cohort. Turkish speaking cohort will be launched in November, hopefully. We are
Yeah,
planning to launch a Turkish cohort, Turkish speaking women around the world, not just in Turkey, hopefully around the world. And some of women doesn't feel comfortable in English to do all the stuff because it's a personal development thing. Then you need some insights in your own language. So I'm very glad to be part of it. There are already been French-speaking cohorts,
yeah,
and we are so glad to do it in Turkish too.
yeah.
Thank
I'm
you
very
for the
excited.
opportunity.
Yeah, we've also recently kicked off a Japanese speaking cohort as well.
Oh, I didn't
For
know that.
women inside in Japan as well. So I'm very excited that you are leading this initiative to launch a Turkish cohort. This can only be good things. I'm just so looking forward to that. So that's fantastic.
Yes, me too. And my last question today, looking to the future, what emerging trends or challenges in leadership development are you most excited or concerned about? And how is Potential Life positioning itself to address these in a rapidly changing global landscape?
Well, I think there's an awful lot going on. Um, you know, it's very easy just to talk about AI and to get scared about AI and everything that will be perhaps eliminated because of AI. And I'm not well positioned to comment on that. But what I can say with absolute confidence is that as AI continues having its effects, what will be left for us humans is going to be the most human of things that we can be doing. And so the creative work, the curious work, the collaborative work, maybe the artistic work. And so organizations are on a very rapid path towards humanization. And so the opportunity for all of us is to be that human person, to dare to be human. Give yourself permission to be human, with everything that implies in terms of imperfection, in terms of emotions, in terms of creativity. And I think that the winning organizations will be those that acknowledge this, of course, but celebrate this and harness this as a powerful thing. I don't believe that there is a strategy to try and protect against AI. I think there's a future where we embrace the consequences of a world, an AI world, and that necessarily means us humans. What we're going to do, we're going to be human together. So let's make that happen in the most joyful way that we can.
I think AI makes my life much more easier as a person who is mother language is Turkish and using English as a second language. I'm using AI to, all sorts of AI platforms to make my communication better with everybody I'm trying to do the networking with, and it gives, saves me a lot of time because in my own information, I do it maybe in 1 hour, I just do it seconds. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And we were able to do this Japanese cohort partly because of AI, because we can now speak to each other. It's not perfect, but we can speak to each other with simultaneous AI-enabled translation. This was something that just wasn't possible a short time ago. So it's incredible what's happening to us.
Yes. So, would you like to share one final message with our audience?
Well, life is long, but it goes by pretty quickly. And it's a shame to be trying to live somebody else's life, because all of those lives are already taken. And so I think the idea of just living, just being the best, daring to admit that you are you, and making something special out of the fact that you are you, is one of the most important things that we can do. And if I just tell my own story now, you mentioned before that I was studying mathematics. So when I was at university, I studied a certain branch of mathematics that's called pure mathematics, which is a slightly strange thing that most people hate. And it's a rather abstract field where we're looking at abstract objects. Now, when I joined McKinsey, I think McKinsey took a very quick look at my resume, saw the word maths, and before I knew it, I was doing financial modeling. Now, I can do financial modeling, I can do numbers. It had nothing to do with the kind of maths that I did at university. And so I did that for a little while, maybe a year, and it was okay. And then I was placed after maybe 18 months on my first ever strategy project. Now, I didn't know what strategy was, but I discovered quickly that pure maths and strategy for me are very similar, because strategy is about seeing patterns. It's about simplifying a world where everybody sees complexity and you're somehow able to make sense of it. You simplify, you crystallize, you see patterns. That felt just like pure maths to me. I felt like I was somehow exercising the same mental paths. And so my career started to take off as a strategist. Now, if I'd known earlier that I had some character strength around simplification, communication, crystallization, I could have gotten there much quickly. And then later I was working with Tal, my co-founder, Potential Life. Now, Tal is somebody who has an encyclopedic memory. He remembers everything. He remembers books that he read 10 years ago. I can barely remember a book I read 1 week ago. But actually, we're very complementary, because I'm good at crystallizing, of making sense, of simplifying, of seeing patterns, and I have access to his encyclopedic brain. So put the two of us together, we complement each other. And so what I realized as the years went by, a lot of my natural strengths were around perspective, ability to see things from different angles, simplification, communication. And I'm having the best time of my life because I simply get to be me by doing that. So I guess I'm lucky. But just think, what's the equivalent story for each and every one of us? And if only each and every one of us could get earlier to that point in our life, I think that makes for a much more enjoyable, but also much more successful life.
Wow, that's beautiful. Dare to be you.
Yeah,
It's very good. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your time. We are thrilled to have you with us and look forward to collaborating on more projects in the future. It was a pleasure hearing your insightful answers. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much, Angus.
my pleasure.
And don't miss out on this captivating 5 o'clock tea talk. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more insightful sessions, for more great content visit www.thecouchmagazine.com and enjoy our quarterly magazines. See you there. Bye.